want people to understand that this step is a necessary step and frankly one that could have been avoided had CPS worked with us from the very beginning. Instead, they have fought us every step of the way. Today, the Chicago Teachers Union filed a 10-day notice with the Illinois Education Labor Relations Board indicating that more than 26,000 public school teachers, clinicians, and paraprofessionals may go on strike in coming days. The notice is a legal requirement defined by state law. No date for a strike has been set by this leadership. Should CTU members call for a work stoppage, this will be the first teacher strike in Chicago since 1987. This is a difficult decision for all of us to make, but this is the only way to get the board's attention and show them that we are serious about getting a fair contract, which will give our students the resources they deserve. CPS seems determined to have a toxic relationship with its employees. We have been belittled, bullied, and betrayed by this administration. Our members are demoralized, and this district is doing all it can to take the joy out of teaching and learning, and we are fighting to put it all back. They denied us our 4% raises when there was money in the budget to honor our agreement. They attempted to ram a poorly thought out, longer school day down our throats, and on top of that, they want us to teach a new curriculum and be ready to be evaluated based on that curriculum as well as our students' standardized test scores. And it has been insult after insult after insult. Enough is enough. We have been in contract negotiations with Chicago Public Schools since November. We have been without a contract since June of this year, after its 5-year agreement with the district expired without a new agreement in place. So what do we want? A better day? We want job security and fair compensation for our members. We remain at the table. That's what I want to make clear. We remain at the table, and we will be there until we have a contract. Labor talks have been productive on some fronts, such as winning provisions for nursing mothers, ensuring that textbooks will be available on the first day of school, and teachers will have access to functioning computers, and counselors and social workers will have appropriate private workspaces to serve students. But the bigger issues, wages, job security, and evaluations, are still on the table, and the two sides remain far apart. Again, we will have a contract, and it will come the easy way or the hard way. If our members are on the picket line, we will still be at the table trying to hammer out an equitable agreement. But there's a much larger picture here. We have been very transparent throughout this entire process. We have nothing to hide. We stand with our parents in fighting for equal access to high-quality education for all students, regardless of zip codes. And we want people to understand that this step is a necessary step and, frankly, one that could have been avoided had CPS worked with us from the very beginning. Instead, they have fought us every step of the way. Their surrogates have paid protesters, taken out misleading radio ads, and have instituted a smear campaign against public school workers, all under the guise of caring for the children. Teachers, paraprofessionals, and school clinicians have been vocal in their opposition to CPS's draconian policies. In May, nearly 10,000 of us marched in downtown in preparation for a strike authorization vote, which drew a 98% approval from CTU membership. Only 1.82% of CTU members voted against authorizing a strike. Member angst was driven by CPS's overly aggressive push for a longer school day without indicating how the district would staff and pay for that program. Educators were angry that the board made no commitments to offering students the much-needed art, music, physical education, and world language classes that they needed. We understand very clearly there's a fiscal crisis at CPS. There's always a fiscal crisis. And when they're asked to put resources on the table for our students, we have chronic underfunding and misplaced priorities in this system. CPS would rather shut down schools rather than give them the resources they need. Thousands of students have been displaced by CPS school actions. Teachers, clinicians, and paraprofessionals have lost their jobs, and parents have no choice but to keep their children in under-resourced neighborhood schools or ship them off to a poor-performing charter operation. And as I've said, there's much more at stake here. This contract fight is part of a larger fight because we are concerned about the board's plan to close over 100 neighborhood schools and create a system that doesn't serve our children. This crisis is real. This education crisis in Chicago is real. So whenever our students perform well on tests, CPS moves the bar higher, telling them that they're failures and blaming us. Now they want to privatize public education and further disrupt our neighborhoods. We've seen public housing shut down, public health clinics, public libraries, and now public schools. There is an attack on public institutions, many of which serve low-income and working-class families. So to reiterate, today, we filed the 10-day strike authorization notice with the Illinois Education Labor Relations Board. We also served a copy of CPS's general counsel. This notice does not specify a strike date and none has been set. We will meet with our leaders today and tomorrow and we will determine the next step. So we call on parents, community leaders, and taxpayers to contact the board now and tell them, give us a fair contract so we can get back to doing what we love, teaching, educating, nurturing our future. Thank you. Okay, I'll take questions.
Karen, the main question is, I mean, as this comes to a resolution, what is the main sticking point? I know you have several issues that you guys have, but what's the deal breaker? What's the thing?
Wages, benefits, job security, and the best way, they're all important. It's a better day. I mean, we haven't had any changes in what we think is important. Those things and the big issues are still on the table about how to accomplish that.
What falls under the umbrella of job security? Is this merit pay issue that today CEO Brizard said that has never been broached on the part of his side?
So,
Written writing.
A, how would he know? He's never been there. I don't even know how to answer the question. I'm sorry, what did you say again,
Well,
please?
what's under the umbrella of job security?
Job security are things that we have big issues with about how our day looks. What does our day look like? Can we count on having a day? Those are the kinds of things we're talking about.
Have they backed off of the merit pay, differentiated pay? Have they backed off of that in the talks at all? I mean, the latest they said...
We have not even gotten to the wage discussion yet. So as far as we're concerned, the stuff that they were talking about from the very beginning is still on the table. The information that they brought to the fact finder is still, we have not discussed wages. We are here saying maybe this will get to that point. So
You haven't gotten to wages yet. What are you stuck at right now before you can get there?
We're actually ticking off small things like I talked to you about earlier, like having textbooks available on the very first day of school. I know that sounds like, really, that doesn't happen, but in CPS, it does not. Okay? Having texts and supplies available on day one. We just got to that, quite frankly. I mean, these are the kinds of things that we're trying to make people understand how serious things are in our working conditions are.
How would you rate the chances there will be a strike?
I don't have a crystal ball.
Karen, do you guys intend to negotiate through the weekend, through Labor Day weekend?
Oh,
on the
yes.
talk schedule?
We will remain at the table. We will remain at the table for as long as it takes. Yes.
Are you talking today, this afternoon? Like, when is the next round of talks?
Tomorrow. We've had meetings today. Yes.
Karen, if the board were to agree to open up more of the working condition and learning condition and staffing level issues, would that be enough to avert a strike?
We haven't had that discussion with our leadership, and that's why we asked most of them here today. So after you all leave, we will be having a meeting where we'll have some discussions about what's important, what's on the table, update them.
Has there been any movement whatsoever from last night where you said there were just small things? I mean, any movement in today's discussions at all?
What did we get today? We got what did we get for? We got lunch and private workspaces for clinicians.
So Karen,
Lunch.
10 days, so, I'm speaking as a reporter and a parent, so you're saying no date has been set, so clarify for everyone, please. Does that mean you meet tomorrow and you decide you're going to set a date? Does it have to be 10 days from tomorrow then, or would it still be 10 days from today?
Once we have delivered this notice, it's anytime it's the 11th day, correct? After 10 days. So it would actually be the 11th day would be the earliest.
Okay, and then follow up, as, for parents, do you feel you have an obligation to all of the hundreds of thousands of parents out there to let them know as soon as possible as to when you might actually walk off the job so they can make contingency
It's a room full of
plans
parents.
for?
Well, we have a room full of parents right here who have their children in Chicago Public Schools. Absolutely. We have an obligation. I mean, again, we need to put a focus on what it is we do and what it is we do not do, right? So this is about making education infinitely better for all of our children, because right now it isn't. So maybe where your children go to school, they have textbooks on the first day. There are places where that is not the case, where we have children who have serious problems and they need privacy and they need to be safe when they talk to their social workers or their counselors about these kinds of things. So we have a lot of work to do.
But my point is, with parents, do you feel that, will you let them know sooner than later?
As soon as a strike date is set, everyone will know, right?
And how many days
Everyone will know.
How many days ahead do you have to?
10 days. That's why we're giving this today. We've told everybody today. Everybody can count, right? We're good at that. Yes. We don't have anything like that. There is no trigger. You mean, what can we do to settle it?
No, I mean in terms of the strike itself. So you filed this notice, but you don't have to strike, obviously.
No.
So I'm just wondering, you're clearly unhappy with the way the talks are going. What's going to be the deciding factor that you're going to pull the trigger and say, we're going to strike on the 11th or something?
It depends on how far they want to go with us and what they see, that they understand how important this is for us. Yes.
Do you expect to discuss setting a strike date tomorrow?
I'm sorry. You're asking. Yes, Rosalind. Sorry. What did you say?
Do you expect to discuss setting a strike date tomorrow? And if so, what is the possible timeline for that?
Well, again, we have the real leaders of our union here today. We have a huge cross-section of people that we're going to have a conversation with them. We're going to talk about pros and cons. We're going to ask them for feedback. And then we assume that the House of Delegates tomorrow, if they choose to take that up, once we explain to them where we are and what are the specifics of things that we think are important, we assume that the House of Delegates, someone from the House, will make some motion as to what to do.
Can you talk to us about the hours of the contract talks? Are they 2 to 3 hours? Are they all day long? As we're
It's
winding
different
down-
from day to day. It's not set. It depends on what we're doing, how we are. I mean, sometimes when we have to caucus, it takes a lot of time to have those discussions. But this contract is also, It's about, as I told you yesterday, it's about dotting I's and crossing T's. So we have to be very, very careful, and we're not going to just say, okay, we're sort of done and leave things to chance. So it's going to take a lot of work.
This is full-time work. Right?
This is full-time work.
You
Yes.
said that the mayor's people were going to be now involved in those contract talks. Have people from the mayor's office been in those talks in the last 2 or 3 days? And who are those people? Has the climate changed since?
We have a lot of subcommittees going on. I mean, that's the one thing people need to understand. There's all kinds of stuff going on depending upon what we're talking about. So there are a variety of different subcommittees meeting.
So if you could summarize, Ms. Lewis, where you actually are, when you say you haven't even hit wages, that just kind of says you're not very far along. I mean, can you summarize where you are? If you had to take 100 steps, are you guys still on step number 10 here?
I'd say we're probably at about, what, 23, 24, if we're talking 100. You know, we're nowhere near passing, so.
Karen, how can you file an intent to strike notice when you aren't at an impasse? Or do you believe you are at an impasse?
The intent to file is not done just because you're at or in impasse. All right, so we just need to get this process continuing to move, or some people will drag their feet forever. We've been doing this since November. We've had how many sessions? 47? 48 sessions. I mean, most contracts are settled
24 is what you said.
at the most 24. So we need to move forward.
So at the absolute earliest, September 10th, that Monday would be the absolute...
That would be the absolute earliest. Did we all do the math?
I just want to make sure I'm
No,
checking.
did we do the math? Yes.
That's
The
the
first,
earliest.
that would be the, right, because it's 10 days, it's not 10 school days, it's
When
10
you
days.
talk about this process dragging on, who's at fault in this process dragging on? Are they just not coming back with reasonable, you know, there's no movement in terms of their proposals? Who's
Okay,
driving the
so
feet?
Noreen, they didn't start negotiating seriously until we put 10,000 people in the street on May 23rd. They didn't start really negotiating seriously until we took a strike authorization vote. And then again, they didn't start really negotiating seriously until we got the fact finders report back. So it's sort of like, okay, we're going to work with you, and they're like, okay, blah, 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 but then we have to continue to say, all right, what else do we have to do legally? So we've gone through all of these steps. So
What is the union given on?
Seriously, I mean, is it that they're not bending on any of their offers? Or
Excuse me?
What do you mean by negotiating seriously with you guys? Is it that they're not bending on any of their offers, or is it something, or are they just taking too long to respond to the union's offer?
So we have, I mean, what you do in the negotiation process is that you give a proposal, you get a counter proposal, you give a proposal, you work on it until you all feel comfortable with it. That was going on, and we would get, well, we had a big contract to go through. I mean, so first of all, you have to understand we had to still go through the entire contract. So that took some time, and we were okay with that. We knew that would be a fairly lengthy process. But once we've gone through it and we've gone back and forth, it's time to start making some decisions. So, I mean, that is where we're having big issues on.
Karen, I'm sure we're going to hear from CPS that you haven't given. So can you give us some examples of how the union
No,
has
no, I'm not giving any examples.
given on the bargaining table?
This is, okay, what, we're working a 7-hour day. What else?
You know.
That's a pretty big give, isn't it? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.